if you have some. So because we are recording, we know that sometimes people have things of a personal nature or something that they don't want to say that would be recorded in these meetings. And as always, when we have these, we will avail you with the opportunity to ask privately. And so if you send a personal message to Amy, Amy will protect your anonymity and ask the question for you. And also at any time, please feel free to email either Amy or I about questions concerning the union or whatever. And so if you would prefer not to bring up questions in a general membership meeting, we can understand that that actually might be wise, but please understand that you can always ask us and we will try to give you an answer as quickly as we can, and hopefully one that you like, though we can't promise that part. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Miller. I am the president of the Oakland chapter of the AAUP, and this is our winter term general membership meeting. We had a face-to-face meeting yesterday. If you went to that meeting, you do not have to attend today, but you are more than welcome to attend today. It is basically the same stuff is what we're going to cover. For the convenience of our members, we try to have multiple points of contact. So also just to remember, I am very bad at talking and watching the chat at the same time. So you can say all kinds of horrible things about me and I probably won't ever catch it. But we do have people who are following the chat, and hopefully we will not miss any sort of threads of comment that are going on. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with the union in particular. And so we're going to begin by covering the union's direct involvement right now. And then there will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting for Q&A and that sort of thing, and also for issues that maybe we have not addressed. Also, we're going to slightly shift the order of things. We're going to talk about the possible AAUP affiliation with the AFT before we talk about the open versus closed formularies. So we're going to shift those two things in the agenda, and that's on the basis of what happened yesterday. People had a lot of questions and wanted to talk a lot about healthcare, and so we wanted to make sure that we got to that part with a lot of time. So first, nominations committee. We have seats open on the executive committee, and we will be having an election shortly. So as per our process, we had a nominations committee that consisted of Katie Greer, Danielle Ligoki, and Tara Gardner. And they came up with a slate of possible candidates for the executive committee who would begin their services in the August of 2022. The current nominees on the ballot are Jacob Becker, Caitlin Dembski, Chabi Govind, Holly Greiner-Hellman, Eileen Johnson, Mike Latcha, Lori Ostergaard, and Cindy Siphonis. And we have brief bios on the ballot itself. So if there might well be people who you don't know everybody. So if you want to know a little bit more about them, they've all given us brief biographies and why they want to be on the executive committee, and that will be there on the ballot. The ballot will be posted somewhere mid next week, I think, is where we're looking at. So that is that piece of it. Also, it is possible under our bylaws to make nominations from the floor. So if there are other people who you think ought to be serving on the executive committee, or at least be appearing on the ballot, now is the time to make those nominations.
You're also allowed to self-nominate if you're interested.
Yes.
I nominate Kathy Battles.
Is she close enough to hit you?
I just texted her and she was fine with it.
Okay.
Okay.
I publicly deny it, but I don't know.
We will have to confirm that she's willing, but yes,
Fine.
you're fine. Okay.
She says it's fine. That'll make everyone vote for me. Fine, whatever.
Kathy, I will send you an email if you can send me a candidate statement, just a brief paragraph, but I'll shoot you an email after this meeting.
Thank you.
Do we have any other nominations from the floor? Or from the screen? I'm not quite sure what the terminology is when you're on Zoom. Going once, going twice. Sold American, okay. Whoop.
Can I just interrupt 1 second? Because Janelle had a question about what the ballots will include. These 4 positions are at-large positions. They aren't specific to titles at all. So we have our special lecture, we have our untenured, so they can be any rank within the bargaining unit. I think there is no required balance of these 4 positions. It can literally be, it could be 4 special lectures, it could be 4 full professors, it could be 4 special instructors, it could be anything. There's any mix. And I think Mike and I will have to look back at the old ballot from last time to see if we listed that for the at-large positions. I think we didn't put in rank, but I'm not sure. But everyone kind of does it in their blurbs anyways. So I'm not 100% sure to that answer about what will appear on the ballot specifically. Thank you.
Any other nominations, questions? I can only see one of the 4 screens, so you have to
You're
shout
good.
out.
If the hand raises, it goes to the front, so you're good.
It goes to the front. That's what I was hoping. So, okay. Cool beans. All right. I'm going to do an update on chapter issues. We normally do a chapter financial report in the winter term meeting. However, for a variety of reasons, because our budget year has shifted because of issues with the way that the IRS wants us to report and our accountant, we're going to move that report to the fall. So everything is fine. Trust us. I realize that's a horrible thing to say. Everything is fine. We are simply shifting the report because we can actually give you better, more complete data if we wait until the fall. And so that report, although it does normally occur in the winter, will be occurring in probably October of 2022. That also, we have an advocacy plan. We developed this earlier this year, and every year we're going to have basically an advocacy plan that we work to. Amy, can you share your screen? There we go. So this is our working plan. It looks similar to the one that we provided to you last fall. Our belief is that our union will be stronger if we put more emphasis on advocating for our group and for faculty interests beyond the university. So certainly we are, as you can see, this includes both on campus, but also off campus. And I wanted just to update you on some of the things that we've been doing. We've been working to improve relations with student organizations. In the past, we have, to the best of my knowledge, never had hostile relations, but we've often had no formal interaction. We now have an AUP representative to the Oakland Student Congress who is there to answer questions. So the Board of Trustees has not given us a liaison, but the OU Student Congress has. Yay, them. That also, we have leadership meetings with the officers of the Student Congress and to find out whether or not there are issues of mutual concern where we can help each other. And those have been very fruitful in terms of thinking about things. We also have been working on projects with the Student Congress. We just had a labor panel last week, and which went wonderfully, I thought. And we are hoping to continue to do that, to have informational events like a workshop. Other things might come up. We have no idea of what's going to happen in the future, but we will always be there to see if there are things that we can do with the students that would benefit us all. We have also been maintaining regular relations with the heads of the other unions on campus. We have all of the other unions on campus are bargaining this year. And so we have been talking about bargaining strategy. We have been talking about, what we know about various things, particularly healthcare, about budgeting of the university, that kind of thing. So we've been sharing information and just sort of talking out problems collectively. And that has been very useful. And I will point out, although they're not a collective bargaining group, we do have representatives from the APs that we meet with, because many of their concerns are very similar to ours. There are some members of the APs who would like to form a union, but there's not enough of a sort of solidarity around that point. Part of the problem is that the APs are an extraordinary diverse group in terms of what they do on campus, what their ranks are in terms of their sort of importance in the administrative hierarchy. And so it's even harder for them to build a consensus of approach than it is for faculty to do that. And so far they have not been successful, but there certainly are members of the APs that are very interested in that. We have been meeting with members of the state legislature. Basically, we've invited many people, everybody who is willing to talk with us, we talk to. Some of those meetings have been extraordinarily fruitful. We've gotten actually some very good advice about legislation and about approaches to politics and that sort of thing from a couple of the reps. We are continuing to have those meetings, hopefully, as COVID begins to dissipate. If it does dissipate, we will be going to Lansing occasionally and talking with folks in their offices. So far, it's all been Zoom. We have also been communicating with the Board of Trustees, with the governor's office over appointments to the Board of Trustees. We have endorsed 3 candidates for the board. Gretchen Whitmer will be appointing 2 members of the board in August, and we have endorsed 3 candidates, and we are hoping that 2 of them get selected. We have also, I want to point out, have had an enormous support in this endeavor from the AFT in Michigan. David Hecker has been really on the ball in terms of helping us make connections and actually going out and stepping in and lobbying on our behalf. We have, excuse me, we have continued to file FOIAs to discover more information about the way the university is run, that we know more with as the result of them than we would without. And so we will, if there's something that we are suspicious of, something we have a question about, we will continue to use that legal mechanism to find more information. We will continue our strong efforts to maintain ties with the national AUP and with the other state organizations at Eastern and Wayne and Western and so on and so forth. We are in the process of trying to strengthen the state at a higher level, but also we are encouraging folks. The national organization has lots of really good workshops. Some of them are virtual, some of them are actually in person. And so if you would be interested in learning more about specific things in union organization, we might be able to connect you to be able to do one of these workshops and that sort of thing. So please, if you're interested in learning more about labor organizing and that sort of thing, please tell us and we'll try to facilitate that for you. Also we are having, we had asked for a liaison to the Board of Trustees. That was turned down in January, but actually myself and 3 other faculty members and 2 members of the board and the president and the provost are going to meet on the 11th to talk about ways of improving communication between the board and the faculty. And so we're going at this with a clear eye, but we also are not going to turn down any possible opportunity to improve communications with the board. That's basically a highlight of what is going on. If there are any outreach and other kind of advocacy issues that you think that we need to pay more attention to, please suggest a way that, and particularly if you, I mean, if you went to high school with a member of the state legislature, you need to become my new best friend. If there's stuff that you know that you think would be helpful to our efforts, please contact either me or Amy, and we will try to make our advocacy efforts even stronger. But they're certainly better now than they were in the past, and we will continue to improve them as time goes on. That's, at least that's our plan. So, and that handout was also sent to you via email. And so you have that if you want to review it at some other time. Also, I will point out, we have always, what we do in bargaining years is the AUP National does a budget analysis of Oakland University for us. And this year, because of a variety of things, we thought it would be really useful for us to do a budget analysis this year, even though we are not bargaining. And so Rudy Fichtenbaum, once again, will be doing this for us. So this will be a continuation, or has done this for us. Also, I will point out, the national is footing the cost for it. So we got this at a kind of cost-free, for us anyway, level. This was your national dues at work. And the report has been sent to us. You should have gotten an email today that had that as an attachment. It's fairly long, but it is exciting reading. It is magnificent. you will be so impressed by the extraordinary fiscal strength of Oakland University. We should be proud of the fact that we are such a rich institution despite all of the travails that we've all been through. So anyway, please, I am being somewhat facetious, yes, but look at it, check it out, try to understand. I realize that many of you, when you start, there are economists in the room, so I know you guys love to look at this stuff, but for those of you who aren't economists and think economics is really, the dismal science, in the literal sense, please, it's nice to think about this stuff because it does have a very direct bearing on our lives. I also want to shift to the proposed affiliation of the AAUP with the AFT. Negotiations at the national level have been going on for some time now. And there is at the national meeting in June, there will be a vote on whether or not the AAUP should affiliate with the AFT. That will mean that essentially our chapter will be embraced in the larger umbrella of the AFT in the assumption that this vote goes through. And I just want to point out some of the advantages and disadvantages of this. There will be increased costs as a result. As a participant in the AFT, we will have to pay the Michigan AFT kind of payments, the stipends. In the meantime, in the next couple of years, the national AAUP will be covering some of those costs. And so basically the increased money that our chapter will be paying it's going to step up. It's not going to just happen bammo after the election. And so there will be over the long term an increased cost, but at first it will be somewhat negligible. However, for those increased costs, we will get significant increased benefits. That very importantly, the AFT has legal resources that the AAUP nor we have. They are in the thick of a number of legal issues concerning labor unions in the country, and they have an enormous amount of expertise. And that expertise would then become available to us in ways that it is not now. That also the AFT in Michigan and also nationally has much more political heft than the AAUP has. And so we have already been working informally with David Hecker on a number of projects that mutually benefit us here at Oakland, but also benefit other educational unions in Michigan. And so far, those have been really very productive and helpful. And most notably, his efforts to help us get more board members appointed who would be relatively friendly. And when I say relatively, in one case, incredibly friendly to us, but certainly we won't have to worry about hostility. And generally, these are people, we've talked to them, we know them, we have absolute confidence that if they were on the board, our interests would be protected to the best of their ability. We know that they would be advocating for faculty interests. We also, by partnering with the AFT, would have access to their liability insurance. That would save this chapter a fair amount of money. And so that would be good for us in the long run. We at the AAUP here in Oakland will remain an independent body. We do our own elections, we will, that in terms of the day-to-day of our chapter, you will not see much of a change. It will be fairly invisible. That also the national AAUP is not going to disappear. It will continue to function as a national organization and continue to have its same agenda. And so in that sense, also, if you have been interested in things like the AAUP sanctioning of universities and that sort of thing for bad behavior, that will continue to happen through those offices. Also, I will point out, we are sending delegates to the conference this summer in June. I will be a delegate. Also, Cindy Sifonis, who sits on the executive committee, will be in attendance, will be a delegate as well. Amy will be there, although because she's not a member of the faculty, cannot be a delegate, but she will be there helping us and being herself and in her wonderful, inestimable way. That is basically the fundamental kind of basis of the affiliation between the two organizations, or the affiliation with the AFT. Are there any questions about that? Oh, I see. What's the AFT? It's the American Federation of Teachers. They started as a public school association, but in the last 10 years or so have been going more and more deeply into higher ed. They're extraordinarily active on the West Coast, and they tend to focus more on adjunct and contingent labor, but they also do represent, I mean, they're at Wayne State, they're at Western, so they have a fair amount of experience with higher ed. Any other questions? Hearing none, seeing no raised hands, I will assume that you all feel appropriately informed. There have been things sent from national, which hopefully did not go to your spam, that helps to sort of spell out what's going on. And so if you want more information, you can, go back through those messages, and certainly I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, if not here, via email and so on. So if at 3 o'clock this morning, you suddenly have a question about the American Federation of Teachers, please send me an email. I will not answer it until the morning. But Janelle, you had a question?
Yeah, there's several people have asked the same question in the chat. What are we talking about? How much are we talking about increasing dues? And I mean, yeah, it sounds like you guys are convinced that this will be a good thing or a good way to go, but there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about how much more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I put it in the chat there because we don't know the numbers for sure. So in joining the AFT, we have to join the AFT state and local, and then we also will be joining the AFL-CIO. So those are all things we have to join. We do not pay any national dues to the AFT. We only pay our nationals to AAUP. In the first 6 months, the national AAUP will pay all of it. And then in the first year, we have to pay 5% to AFT, and then it goes up to 25%. So the best I can calculate now, we're sort of working with loose numbers right now, is that our overall expenditure in terms of dues going out will maybe be increased about 20%. It's probably a little lower than that. We do not at all expect that we will make the decision to increase dues by 20% by any stretch of the imagination. We have a very, very healthy balance, and I don't think we'll have the need to do that. So we have to kind of wait until we find out if this actually passes, because this is a national vote. So whether it passes or not is going to be up to all of the chapters of the AAUP. And if it passes, we won't have a say in that. So we need to wait until that. And we have meetings set up with national to talk about the numbers more specifically. So I mean, that's the short answer. But the answer is we don't know. Dues might go up slightly. I think we would wait a few years before we did it, and sort of have conversations about it and whatnot. Karen, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much my sense of it. Yeah, we're not going to really know right away, but we do want to put our, we understand that our members, many of our members are, concerned about finances, and this will ultimately increase, but we are trying to soften that blow as much as possible. As Amy mentioned, we've been okay on reserves. When we think about what are the potential, ways of covering this, I will point out, one of the things that I had mentioned in a meeting, which might, we've been giving dues holidays. There might not, it's entirely possible there will never be dues holidays in a kind of consistent way. But we tend to have relatively low expenses as a union. I mean, our day-to-day expenses are actually much lower than most others. So we can actually absorb this increase moderately well, better than some other institutions may be able to. So, but yeah, I think 20% is kind of the maximum, and we're going to try to soften that and gradually step it up, as opposed to just bam everything.
We also, no one remembers the last time dues were raised. Not any member of the executive. It's been that long that no one remembers. And a lot of the executive committee has been on the executive committee for a long time. Karen, Eddie has a question.
Yes, Eddie.
All right, okay, so is my understanding correct that our local chapter member will vote on the proposal?
No, the local chapters do not. The delegates, so I will be voting.
Right. I mean, so
Right.
how, I guess my question is that, are you going to poll us, give us a vote on whether we support or not, and then you will vote based according to the general membership inclination?
I will say right now, I would appreciate, I was not going to do a formal poll. I was not going to send out a questionnaire or anything like that, but certainly that's one of the reasons why we wanted to discuss it at the general membership meeting, because I figure if people sort of digest this and think, holy moly, this is a bad idea, then they'll tell me, or holy moly, this is a great idea, they'll tell me. My sense is that the increased costs that will ultimately be connected with this are probably well worth, this is an investment in our financial security in the long run, although basically we will be paying higher dues. I am not an enthusiastic supporter of the merger, but I think that this is a wise direction to go.
Is there any possibility for you guys to have a formal vote and then you guys will commit to the decision of the entire membership?
We had not thought about that, to be honest. But I will bring this up to the executive committee.
All right. So just in case that you guys decide not to, I would like to voice my opinion. I do not like the merger. I think that their mission is very different from AAUP. So just my 2 cents.
Okay, no, that's fair. They are historically very different institutions. But given, I will say my personal opinion, if you had asked me this question about merger, or about, it's technically not a merger, it's an affiliation. If you had asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have been opposed to it. But given the shift in labor law and in politics, I think the AFT can provide us stuff that we cannot provide for ourselves. So that is why I'm leaning in favor of it. So, Sumi,
I agree with Janelle and Eddie. I think you guys need a formalized vote of the membership because the executive committee approves it, but the membership controls the union body. And if it is increased dues, membership body should have a say in it. And I think it would be wise to conduct a informal poll or whatever you want to do. So the whole body of the membership votes on it and they know that there will be increased. These are the benefits and these are the cons or something like that. I support the idea that it should be formalized voting before we jump into it from the OU chapter.
well, I would point out, we don't have the option if the AUP at the national meeting votes in favor of the affiliation, we will not have the option of being an independent AUP chapter.
Right, I understand that, but at
It means
least,
we'd have to completely reorganize.
yeah, that is, I understand. If the national votes on it, they trump our vote, right? I understand that.
Correct.
But at least let's get the
Okay.
approval of
I
the
see what you're
membership.
saying.
I mean, that's nothing too much to ask, right?
We will be making that decision in the next 24 hours.
Thank you.
David?
Wait, I just want to interrupt for a second. I don't think we need to make that decision in the next 24 hours because we need the executive committee to meet. So
Yeah, okay,
how about after next Friday?
okay. Okay,
Yeah, so I mean, I don't particularly have a position on whether, the executive committee needs to, poll everyone or, just use their own judgment as our representatives. But I do want to voice a position on whether, this affiliation would be good for us. And I think it would. I mean, and here's why. I mean, I'm tired of being helpless, and I think that the rest of you are too. I mean, we are a union that is legally prohibited from striking. That doesn't, mean that we can't strike, but it means any strike that we have is a very temporary thing. So in contrast to most unions in the private sector, we are missing, the most powerful tool a union has. Okay, so what's the second most powerful tool a union has? The second most powerful tool a union has is to have, enough members that they can have some influence on the government. And the AAUP doesn't have that either. But the American Federation of Teachers does, because there are a lot more teachers than there are professors. And so, something that will give us some influence on the legislators who make the laws under which we're run, and the governor who appoints every single one of our trustees, is something that we desperately need. So I think we really do want this affiliation, even if it'll cost us a few more dollars.
thank you, David. Hayden?
Hi, I just want to say that, I trust your decision personally and value your input because you're way more knowledgeable than we are. So if we're going to have a chapter vote to endorse what position you're supposed to represent for us, we need to be well informed. And so I think it's important you lay out the reasons why you support it so people don't just silly vote and, oh, I don't want to pay for more dues and vote down, as opposed to, and I'm not saying anything negative about my colleagues, but unfortunately, mass election results are not necessarily a good decision-making process. That's just my opinion.
Okie dokie, thank you. Any other comments?
I put my fucking hand up.
So I think that was Kelly.
Oh, sorry. So sorry. I apologize. I didn't know I was unmuted. I would like to echo the last person, and I need to hear from my colleagues that want information, to be polled, that they're not just worried about having their dues raised, because I'm kind of offended that we pay the lowest dues in Michigan, and that's the concern. I want to hear about representation. I want to hear about what David was talking about. I don't care if people don't like pain. We need to invest in this union. It's all we have. And if you haven't paid attention to Wilson Hall, sweet, everybody, we're in trouble. We need power more than anything. So you all know I'm married to the union president. Yeah, okay, I'm sure I'm biased. I'm going to own it. However, anybody could be president. And I'd be saying, please let us do this. That's my 2 cents, and I'm shutting up and I'm not going to swear anymore.
Okay.
I think you're clear in the chat to move on.
Okay. All righty. Okay. It was so much quieter yesterday when we brought this up. Okay. But I'm glad to hear from all of you, actually. Even the ones of you who don't agree with me. I am completely cool with that. Okay. This next thing is kind of complicated. And there are a whole bunch of variables. And so Caitlin Dembski and Tom DeSena and Helen Levinson have been working on our behalf to examine one of the questions that has been created by the healthcare system and certain agreements that we made in the contract. And so Caitlin has done an analysis with the help of Tom and Helen, and I'd like them to present the issues regarding the question of an open versus closed formulary. And although this only directly affects Priority Health, it will indirectly affect everyone. So with that said, Caitlin, I'm going to let you take over.
Did you want me to put it up on the screen, Caitlin, or no?
I think it might be easier if you don't at the moment, just because it's a lot of text. So thank you. Thank you, Karen. So I'm Caitlin Dembski. For those of you I haven't been able to meet, I'm one of the current at-large members on the executive committee. And I've been working with Helen and Tom on this issue since the fall. And I was going to try to lay it out as straightforward as I can, and happy to answer questions, as I'm sure there will be some. So in contract negotiations last summer, we signed a letter of agreement with Oakland stating that we would form a committee with representatives from Oakland to look at the formulary structure of prescription medication coverage for the HMO plans that are offered. Currently, as Karen alluded to, this only affects Priority Health, although any changes would affect everyone, as I'll get to momentarily. Oakland has suggested that we move from a current open formulary structure to a closed formulary structure on Priority Health. And we have until the end of April to inform them whether or not we agree with this change. If we want to stay with an open formulary, Oakland is going to start using the lowest cost closed formulary plan when they figure out how much their 95 or 65% contribution to our healthcare plans will be. So some of you may be wondering what in the world is an open formulary versus a closed formulary, which I'm going to elaborate on. So in an open formulary plan, which is what Priority Health is right now, your doctor has the ability to prescribe you medications that they feel best suit you. Those might be brand name, very expensive medications. Some of them might be for off-label purposes. And so they don't have to go through prior authorization with the health insurance company. And you're also not required to go through what is called step therapy, where you might be required to try a generic version of a drug for several months before being allowed to have that brand name drug. That's an open formulary, which Priority Health currently has. They are suggesting we move to a closed formulary where these restrictions for certain drugs are in place. So you might have to go through prior authorization or step therapy. Oakland's case on this is that it's a cost saving measure, that it will be cheaper for Priority Health members and their plans. There will be some cost savings if we make this shift. In terms of how it affects everyone, the change in prescription coverage would only be specific to Priority Health members. If you're on a different health plan, everyone else is already on a closed formulary, so you wouldn't see that change. What will change for everyone would be the cost of our premiums. So if we decide to stay on an open formulary, Oakland is going to start using that lower cost closed formulary when they're calculating how much that 95 or 65% contribution is. So everyone's premiums would go up as a result. For full-time faculty, and these estimates I've calculated are based solely on the rates we have this year. We don't have next year's rates. It would be an increase of about $10 to $33 a month for full-time faculty, or $7 to $23 a month for special lecturers. If we stayed on an open formulary. If we decided to go closed formulary and now these restrictions were in place, if you're a Priority Health member, Oakland is saying that the expenses or the cost savings would be about $3.50 per month. So a few dollars. But as we talked about in yesterday's meeting, and I do want to acknowledge, everyone else's premiums will likely still go up because they're still going to be using that closed formulary lower cost when they're calculating their contributions. One other thing before I open it up as well. Another question we wanted to answer to is who's affected by this? What's the number of people that would be affected by this? Currently getting prescription coverage under Priority Health, there are about 1,100 people that get prescriptions that are in this group. Most of them won't be affected by the change in the prior authorization or step therapy. There's about 120 people that would be impacted, that would have to go through this process if we changed. And about 60% of them are on chronic long-term things, so they would likely get paperwork and need to go through this change, where the rest might not see that because they're on more short-term medication. Okay. I think that's everything. I don't know if Helen or Amy or Karen want to chime in with anything additional before we open it up for questions.
No, that's a good summary, Caitlin. Caitlin wrote that wonderful FAQ document that Amy sent out yesterday as one of the attachments. So it clearly reflects the summary she just gave and gives additional information.
I just wanted to make a comment. This is Julia. I actually really appreciated the summary you gave because I read that through. It was very clear. I want to comment that Priority has already moved some drugs that they would fill 3 or 4 years ago into this process, even with our open formulary. So I was recently denied something that I was filled quite easily 3 years ago. And so I don't think there's anything we can do to control that. They're going to do that regardless of which path we take.
Thank you for bringing that up, Julia, too. That was something we had heard from other individuals too, that they have had this experience of going through a step therapy process or getting denied while they are on Priority Health. And I'm not sure if that should have happened or not, but thank you.
Well, the step that they give you is it's not even attainable. So there's just no way I could fill that drug that was recommended by my doctor and that I've used in the past.
Mariella.
I have a quick clarification question. Caitlin, you said that even if we don't move to closed formulary, the OU formula will be based to on the closed formulary, which will affect everyone. If we do move to the closed formulary, they're still going to use the closed formulary as the basis. So our decision on whether to move, it sounds like the overall raise in the change of formula will happen regardless of any choices. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, I think that's a good clarification. So yes, regardless, they're going to be using the closed formulary costs. So if you're not on priority health, your premium and insurance rates are probably going to go up regardless, right? But if you're not on priority, your rates are going to go up because they're still using the closed formulary. The main difference, I think, in what we choose is what the priority health members get. So if we stay on open formulary, they're also going to be paying more, but they'll have the flexibility potentially in their prescription coverage. If we shift to a closed formulary, they won't have that anymore, but they'll see a slight cost savings from what we're told.
Thank you.
Yeah, the figure, the slight cost savings that Caitlin just referred to, what Priority Health communicated to us through our series of meetings is that there's a potential savings of an average of $3.65 per Priority Health member per month with the move to closed formulary.
Todd?
I see Todd has his hand up. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, Caitlin, I think I missed this part. Would these increased costs, they would be for all people with priority, or did you mean just everybody, whether they have priority or not?
If we stay on an open formulary,
Yeah.
it would affect everyone. If we go to a closed formulary, it would affect everyone except for priority health members. Because the closed formulary rate is what's going to be used. So regardless, Oakland's contribution is going to get smaller because that closed formulary is typically cheaper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
I see a number of comments in the chat that indicate a philosophical preference for open formulary, and I understand that. One thing that is constant is that Oakland has always used the lowest cost premium as the basis for calculating what their contribution is. So that's what they do now. And the projections of what the cost differences are in the document based on, for example, $10 to $33 of an increase, the lower amount being for coverage for a single person, and then a two-party person coverage, and then 3 or more, which would be more reflective of a family coverage. Amy, did you want to say anything of what will be on the ballot or anything?
Well, I wanted to say a couple things. One, please feel free to send Karen or I questions over the next few days. We'll try to answer as many questions as we possibly can before we do the vote. The vote will be on the same ballot as the 4 executive committee at-large positions. Most likely, Mike and I will have that out on Tuesday, I think. So I think on Monday, I will send that document out one more time just in case. But please send your questions, send them via email, call us, whatever. So we can do our best so you have as much information as possible. Bottom line, it's a really individual decision here. There's a lot of really complicated issues. This isn't a very clear situation, right? There's finance at stake, but there's also people's health at stake. And so it's really complicated. And we want to try and give you as much information as we can.
Yeah, if I can just amplify that, everybody's case is going to be different. It depends if you're currently on a medication that is not on their, will not be on their closed formulary. Also, if, remember, if you are prescribed an off use of an FDA approved drug. So, doctors do this, that, there's this medication that they think will work for this thing that the FDA has not yet approved. And that would also be affected in a closed formulary. So, there's just a lot of intangibles here. You don't know what your health is going to be 5 years from now, or 2 years from now even. Yeah. And it's just, I, as Caitlin said, healthcare costs are going to go up no matter what. So this is very much an individual, you all know your family finances a whole lot better than we do.
And if I can add one more thing, I forgot to mention in my discussion of this, but it's in the FAQ document. But if you're wondering if you're affected by this, you can go on Priority Health's website, so priorityhealth.com. If you scroll to the bottom of their homepage, there's a link that says approved drug list. You can go through the prompts and you can put your prescription in, and it will tell you if it's got a prior authorization requirement or step therapy. So you would know ahead of time if you're on something that'll be affected. And if we do move, Priority would also send you a letter letting you know. But just in case you want to know whether this directly impacts you or any of your family members, you can do that.
I see there's a question in the chat about, Priority Health's commitment long-term to maintaining open formulary coverage. We really don't know. I think those who study the insurance industry have identified a general trend in going away from open formulary. But I don't know enough about Priority Health's internal decision-making to be able to answer that. Any other questions, concerns?
I think you're all caught up in the chat.
Open enrollment will happen none of this will change like instantly. We will go through the regular open enrollment plan. And so at some point in October, we'll get the new descriptions, and usually it's the first or second week of November, they start, doing the paperwork for that. And then it would become effective in January. So no, this would not be immediately impactful, but it would be pretty closely, and it would happen pretty quickly. Janelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious about the interaction effects between these types of discussions and our overall costs for health insurance. I know that we're not doing the negotiating. Oakland University is doing that on behalf of employees. But it does seem like there was some potentially, I don't want to use the term nefarious, but there were some issues, right, with the pricing this year. And so I'm just curious about, what are the implications for this? Is there some way for us to maybe have more of a voice in the negotiating process for the insurance, or being more informed of actually what some of these decisions that are happening, in advance? I guess the whole health insurance question, right? Where that really, the situation with the pricing during negotiations concerns me a bit, and I suspect others are probably concerned too. So I guess maybe putting it all into that context.
Can I take this one, Karen?
Sure.
So, I mean, Janelle, the reason we filed an unfair labor practice charge against the university, which is currently active, is because of the deliberate misinformation we were given during negotiating. So all through negotiating, we weren't given any rates for 2022, which is very atypical. And even at the very end, we sort of said, we'll take any rates, preliminary rates, just give us something to work off of. And they insisted time and time they didn't give them to, that they didn't have them. And so when open enrollment was about to come out and Eric Herpich informed me how much the rates were going up, which were pretty huge this year, is as soon as he did that, it set off red flags for me. And I said, that's insane that they didn't know that. They had to have known that. And so that's why we filed FOIA requests. And we found email exchanges between the members of the bargaining team and our HR that talked about rates. So, I mean, I think we're actively pursuing it to the extent we can within the law. And then I think the second piece of that, Janelle, that's very important is that the 2024 bargaining team, whoever they may be, will have a lot of information on hand about how to ask questions differently so that we make sure we don't get caught that way. So we'll have that word preliminary everywhere. We'll ask it 16 different ways. One of the things that was pretty typical and is pretty normal in a lot of negotiations is to do a lot of requests verbally during the course of negotiations. We will not do that anymore. Negotiations will be more difficult. All requests will be in writing. So I think there's some lessons we learned about ways we can protect ourselves. So that's some of the piece that I just wanted to, from a bargaining perspective, sort of address.
Eddie?
Yes, I just want to double check. I think Amy mentioned that our faculty group is the only group still have that, open plan, correct?
Correct.
Even the administrations?
I don't know that, Eddie. I would have to look into that. I'm not sure about that information.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okie dokie. Very briefly, Amy already raised the last thing we were going to talk about was unfair labor practice. The ULPs that are out there, Amy just, I think, explained perfectly. Our ULP that was filed in January, that we are in the process of dealing with those legally. Also, the university shortly thereafter then filed a ULP against the union for having had an illegal strike, that we are also dealing with that. The cases have been assigned a judge, that the same judge has both cases. We have already presented affidavits, positioning what we understand to be true. We believe that our case against Oakland is warranted and well documented. We believe that Oakland's, excuse me, my lights keep going off. We believe that Oakland's charge against us was retaliatory, because the normal, they had opportunities to react in the time, and chose not to, and did not choose to say anything until after we had filed a ULP. So we do believe that that was retaliatory, that the remedies in both cases are not onerous. They are not asking for financial. We are not asking for financial, but we are asking, both sides are asking for future changes in behavior. So we're going to take that through the court system. Our lawyer has begun preparing his position, and we're pretty confident that he's going to do a good job. So,
Eddie, is that just a leftover hand?
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
So that's where the ULPs are. As more things happen, as judges make decisions, you will be the second to know. As soon as we know, we'll tell you. And so you will stay as abreast of the situation as we can. But in all likelihood, we're not going to have any resolution until well into the summer. That's the best case scenario, I think, is midsummer. So that's sort of where that is. We're now to the new business part of the meeting. Is there any new business that the membership believes we should be considering that was not included in this agenda, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
There's a couple of questions in the chat just related to the ULPs, and which I think we can just address really quickly.
Sure.
What we're asking for is just a cease and desist, that they not do this again, and for notice of wrongdoing. There is no means for us to ask for financial remedy here, as it is impossible to determine damages because bargaining involves so many different pieces. We had long conversations with our lawyer about this because, of course, we wanted money because we know that's where Oakland feels it, but that wasn't an option for us. So those are the remedies we have at hand. They will have longer term consequences in terms of, you know, if we are successful in our unfair labor practice charge in 2024, every time bargaining is discussed in the newspaper, there is going to be a sentence that says, in the 2021 negotiations, Oakland University was found, you know, responsible for an unfair labor practice charge. So, you know, the remedies don't sound big, and obviously, you know, those of us who are really angry would like them to be bigger. But I think we have to sort of look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, even though a decision will not be made, all of the other bargaining units on campus are negotiating this summer. And even while this is out there without a resolution, this will change the tenor of their position. Perhaps not dramatically, but anything that can help our brothers and sisters is a good thing. So.
And just one more quick more, because it's another one. What happens if we get ruled against for having a strike that we had? It's again, it's a cease and desist. Don't do this, which we weren't allowed to do it in the first place, and we did it anyway. So it's the same thing, a cease and desist, and then we would have to post probably on our website that we had been found responsible for this charge, which all of us would. I think the consequences for us are probably much less than the consequences for Oakland losing theirs.
Alexander?
So I was asking, if we prevail in this lawsuit and then in 2024, they try to use their old strategy of, well, screwing us over, what's going to happen? How, or in other words, how will these decisions, if they are in our favor, be enforced?
I mean,
well, I would
go ahead, Karen.
Okay, part of it is going to be based on what the administrative judge says in the finding. It will certainly have the potential of being an important public relations tool that future teams can use in the future but also, once again, depending on what the administrative law judge says, then, you know, we might have also other legal channels that we can utilize to our benefit. But it's hard to say until the decision is actually made.
What are those legal channels?
Well, you know, if they're clearly violating the agreement, then we will talk to our lawyer and say, what can we do?
And-
And our lawyer is pretty good about going after people if there's a legal possibility to do it.
I mean, the huge part of the change here is going to be on our part. That, you know, if we're in the middle of negotiations, because I'm trying to see who else is here, Lori, and I don't know who else is here from the bargaining team. You know, we were well aware. Why don't they normally have these numbers? You know, in 2024, if they're not giving us numbers, we're going to be filing an unfair labor practice charge in the middle of negotiations, right? We won't have this perhaps potentially naive thought that, you know, they give us this information because it's mandated to give us this information. We will also really expand the scope of how we ask for things and what we ask for. So that the sort of the wiggle room they're using right now is that we didn't ask for preliminary, which is nonsense because we did. But that's the word they're hinging their entire argument on. Although the preliminary rates were exactly the same as the final rates.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict into the future, but I can say that future teams and future executive committees will be more diligent about looking for potential repetitions of this kind of behavior, and more aggressive in terms of pursuing legal remedy.
I mean, of course, they will repeat. Those people don't change, and they haven't faced any consequences for what they had done. So I have all reasons to believe that they will try to screw us over and over and over.
Well, I cannot disagree with you, but I can say that we will use every little opportunity we have to prevent them from being successful in those endeavors. Is there any new business that has not been brought up?
Just sorry, I should have put my hand up first. Budget cuts. Have you guys been hearing about budget cuts? And just throwing the topic out there.
We have been meeting with members of the administration about, in particular, issues of minimum class size, also intimations that maximum class sizes would be increased. We have been aggressively pushing against the administration. We understand that there is the administration is looking to resolve a $10 million budget shortfall, is the line that's coming out of Wilson Hall. My understanding is that has been divided among the various academic sections, but also probably among the non-academic sections of the university. We are continuing to try to get a clearer understanding of why it is that how they came to that $10 million figure. We do have a meeting next week with the provost that is in general about these issues of budget, but also very specifically about questions of course cancellation, issues of what time courses are going to meet. We had a number of last minute changes to next year's academic schedule, moving classes away from prime time into either offline or either online or into early hours or late hours. And we are concerned, I think is the polite way to put it, about those. And we've been pushing back, and we are going to continue to push back until we are content that we have a good response.
And I think, I mean, we have Rudy's report, and Rudy's report, as always, says Oakland is, you know, very financially sound. I will say that Rudy's report, I'm not going to pretend I read the whole thing yet, but I read the conclusion, which is the most important part of Rudy's report. But Rudy does specifically point to two issues having to do with COVID that do impact university finances, and that's more negative than maybe he was the year before. So, you know, this sort of acknowledgement that there are issues out there, right? That enrollment is down even more than sort of the trajectory it's already been doing. And our state funding is down. Big things loom in the air. Governor Whitmer's current plan for higher education is amazing. It's wonderful. If by some miracle it passed, it would be wonderful, but that changes. The reality of that getting passed as it is constructed right now is not very likely. So it's always a struggle with Oakland trying to determine what the financial reality is, because no matter how often we say, well, it's this, they're just going to always say it's this, but we just have to keep trying to push back for answers as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on it. We just had a meeting with chairs yesterday. We've been meeting with deans. We will be meeting with the provost. We're pushing back on this as hard as we can. Any other? I would like to.
What about the Baker College thing? It came up in the chat. I'm just curious. Maybe this is too gossipy at this point, or are you guys being notified of any of this stuff?
I mean, it was talked about in Senate multiple times. It hasn't been secret by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't go to the Senate, so I'm not.
Yeah, I know the Senate Budget Committee looked at the thing, looked at and sort of came up with an opinion. I know that it's 8.1 million is probably the cost. But there probably are also going to be associated repair costs. There are issues of classroom space. There are a couple of units on campus that are desperate for more space. And that's why they're talking about this. It does have the advantage it'll be much cheaper than building a building. And Baker wants to unload the property. So we're getting it kind of at, it wasn't on fire, but we're getting it kind of at a fire sale price, which is the big advantage of it right now. But now is a difficult time to be spending that much money on anything. Baker College there's a Baker College campus on the other side of I-75 on University Boulevard. And Baker College is constricting. And so they're closing a number of their campuses, and that's one of the ones they're closing. So it's a building that was built for classroom use. It's relatively new. It's not entirely up to the standards that Oakland has, but apparently it's pretty close. And it wouldn't be that hard to fix the things. Apparently the big concern is roof. I don't understand that, but apparently it's got all the building guts that we would need for instructional space. So it's a lot better than buying an office building and trying to convert it. It has parking. They keep raising that. I thought I should say it.
And they're very excited that 6 of those parking spots are in Pontiac.
Yes, that's true. Yes. So if I may, is there anything else in the chat that I'm missing? Okay. If I may also just add some, Deb, yes, you have a question?
Go ahead, Deb.
Say that, I know I said this before, but SMTD is pretty desperate for space, and we have nowhere to go as of May 1 with the renovation if this building doesn't come through. So we're really fingers crossed over here to be able to move over there for a year, and other people can have it after us all they want. But we're hoping for it.
Yeah. You and I know the School of Health Science is also desperate for space, and William Beaumont is desperate for space. So, and all of us, let's face it, some of us are, it is merely a question of grade. It is not a question of whether we need space. It is a question of how desperately we need space. And some of us really are in desperation. My department is not one of those, but we're also not so healthy that we're willing to give away stuff. In terms of good and welfare, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Glinda Rawls, who is a member of the National Board of the AUP and who is the chair of their committee on racial equity, is going to be talking at Oakland via Zoom in April. Do we have a date yet for that?
We do not yet. We're checking with her.
Okay, we're sort of in the last stages of getting a date for that. So I know this is a topic near and dear to many of your hearts. And as soon as we have that organized, we will be sending you notifications of that. We also had last week a labor panel for those of you who were not there. You missed a really fabulous event. For those of you who were there, thank you for coming. We had a lot of students, a lot of faculty. We had people from every organized labor group on campus. So we had CTs there, we had janitors there, we had everybody there. And just wonderful speakers who did a spectacular job. And it is on tape. We did it jointly with Student Congress. And so Student Congress taped it for us. And it is now up. We had an incorrect version of it, but we now have a corrected version. And so, you know, please take some time when you have a spare moment. I say that in March. And when you have a spare moment, please feel free to check it out. There will be a promotion and review workshop, the thing that we do every spring for untenured faculty who are going up for review and special lecturers who are going up for job security. That will be on April the 2nd, Saturday morning at 10:30. So we have a panel of faculty who have served on FRPC and CAP, and we will be there to basically give some basic guidelines, but also to answer questions, because we understand that untenured faculty often are very nervous about this process. And we want you tenured, but we don't want you nervous. Or if we can get you less nervous, anyway. Advisory Forum is continuing to meet. The next meeting is on April the 14th. So if you have any questions that you want to have brought up with the union, please talk to your Advisory Forum rep or me, either way. And then we will be beginning elections next week via email as usual. So be watching. Understand that every now and then those ballots go to your spam. So check your spam if you haven't gotten a ballot next week.
And also, I remind you like 8,350
Yeah, 8,000 times. Yeah. I think we stop reminding you after you've cast your ballot, but you know, we will fill your inbox until you cast your ballot. It's a form of blackmail. So anyway, well, without further ado then, I think we're going to declare this meeting adjourned. Once again, if you have any questions or concerns, please contact either me or Amy, and we will try to answer them quickly, efficiently, and correctly. The first time, sometimes Amy has to correct me when I give the wrong information. So I do apologize to anyone who has ever gotten bad information from me. I sometimes don't know everything. So anyway, it's hard for a historian to say that in public. Anyway, So thank you very much for coming. Hang in there. Hang in there. Be brave. Be wonderful as you always are.